Hello. Hello, everyone, and thank you for coming tonight. My name is Ania Tura-Bushnell. I'm the Executive Director for the Center for Comparative Studies in Race and Ethnicity. It is such a joy to have you all here. Thank you for making the time. So we're thrilled to have you here, and we could not be more excited to welcome Virginia Grise for Riding the Currents of the Wilding Wind. I'd like to start by thanking the people and the institutions that made all of this possible. We at CCSRE certainly could not have put this on without the very gracious support of our co-sponsors. We want to extend our heartfelt gratitude first to Theater and Performance Studies, who gifted us with the use of this fantastic space. Thank you, Professor Al-Saber. And also with logistical support. We also owe a tremendous debt to our other illustrious co-sponsors, El Centro Chicano y Latino, Center for Latin American Studies, Generaciones, the Department of African and African American Studies, the Department of English, the Creative Writing Program, the Program in Feminist, Gender, and Sexuality Studies. I've got more, guys. The Stanford Institute for Advancing Just Societies, the Program in Modern Thought and Literature, and last but not least, Stanford Arts. So it really was a collective effort. I would also be remiss not to thank everyone on the CCSRI team, but especially Bridget Algie Hewitt, Kenya Blanco Alvarez, and Amy Potemski, who believed in this event and have really invested just tremendous care in every detail from start to finish. Thank you so much for your extraordinary work behind the scenes. And now we are ready to begin. We'll transition to a land acknowledgement developed in collaboration with the Muwekma Ohlone tribe. Thank you.
Stanford sits on the ancestral lands of the Muwekma Ohlone tribe.
This land was and continues to be of great importance to the Ohlone people.
Consistent with our values of community and inclusion,
We have a responsibility to acknowledge, honor, and make visible
the university's relationship to Native peoples.
Hello. So my name is Paula Moya, and I am the Faculty Director of the Center for Comparative Studies in Race and Ethnicity. And I am so pleased to be here today to introduce Virginia Grise, our Kieve lecturer for this evening. Grise, or Vicky as we are privileged to know her, is an award-winning playwright and producer with an impressive body of published work and an even more impressive collection of past and ongoing theater productions. Among her publications are Blue, an epic poem for the stage that was selected as the winner of the 2010 Yale Drama Competition from more than 950 submissions. Your Healing is Killing Me, a book that reflects on living with post-traumatic stress disorder, ansia, and eczema in an age of trigger warnings and crowd-funded self-care. And The Panza Monologues, co-written with Irma Mayorga, a performance piece based on women's stories about their panzas, or bellies, as symbols that reveal the lurking truths about women's thoughts, loves, abuses, and living conditions. Now, Vicky's productions range from solo performances, like the Panza Monologues and Your Healing is Killing Me, to performance installations, I Was Born Here, Remember El Alma, and How Do You Pull Your Own Sadness Up Out of the Ground, to fully staged plays such as Siempre Norteada, Blue, A Farm for Meme, as well as an adaptation of the Chicana author Helena María Viramontes' monumental novel, Their Dogs Came With Them, a play that Vicky has produced inside a medium security women's prison in Arizona, as well as under the I-19 freeway in Tucson. And of course, I have to mention Vicky's multimedia performances, such as the one she will discuss tonight, called Riding the Currents of the Wilding Wind. Now, characteristic of Vicky's approach to her writing, and really to her overall process of making art more generally, is a generosity and open-heartedness that is almost unparalleled. Now, I say almost because Vicky's sheer niceness is matched by that of Helena María Viramontes, the author of the novel that Vicky has adapted, and a woman who remains, for me, an important mentor and friend. Now, described as a blazingly talented writer, and I can attest to that as I've been reading some of her work over this last weekend, Vicky is also a remarkable collaborator. She is someone who is as wont to put together a series of meals featuring the life-giving grain of corn in San Antonio as a performance piece, as she is to pull together a years-long collaboration with Martha Gonzalez of the East LA rock band Quetzal, resulting in a concept album also titled Riding the Currents of the Wilding Wind. Now, I want you to know that we are fortunate, and I mean all of you too, in that we live within driving distance of the world premiere theatrical concert featuring both Grise and Gonzalez in just a few weeks at the Magic Theater in San Francisco. The premiere will take place from Thursday, April 18th to Sunday, April 21st. And if you go to the website for the Magic Theater and you look up Riding the Currents of the Wilding Wind and you decide to buy tickets, I can assure you that if you use the code Stanford, you will get a discount. Now, the point here is that Vicky, together with her partner Maricela Infante, who we are also very happy to welcome here today, truly believes that theater should be available to all of us, that we should not have to be wealthy to participate in the process of making art. And I want to thank Vicky for coming to Stanford to share her work with us now. And we'll turn the stage over to her and to our Stanford colleagues, Jonathan Rosa, Rose Salseda, and Maria Zurita Ontiveros. After the show, Samuel Al-Saber will come up, and of Stanford's Theater and Performance Studies will come up and conduct a brief talk back with Vicky. So, welcome.
I make work about the body, the brown body, the female body, the working class body, the queer body, my body, and what we know. My body, this body, our body, the hunted, the forgotten, the incarcerated, the displaced, our collective body, as theory, in motion, singing, creating, building, together. Every breath of every ancestor, every ash of every wind is about my body, your body, our lineage and language, what I've inherited and what I'm trying to make new. Sometimes I make plays, but really I'm trying to make something more than that. I make art, something more than that even. I make art as resistance, as freedom, as improvisation, improvising the social with sound, with breath, bending energy with music and words, as a reaching, as in to reach, to arrive at, get as far as in a reaching towards a horizon we can see, where the sky meets the earth. What we cannot see, we imagine together. My biggest, my boldest, my most audacious dream is that we live in a world without cages, walls, prisons, detention centers, borders, boxes, a place where we are all free. The material, not ephemeral, not over there, then, the here now, embody, my body, this body, our body, my body. Every time I make the drive to Huntsville, to San Bernardino, to Bradford, to Perryville, my body tightens. Arms by my side, I go through the checklist in my head. Do I have my papers?
Can I see your ID?
Are they up to date?
Empty your pockets.
Was I put on the lists?
This is your number. No open-toed shoes, no sleeveless shirts, no ripped jeans, no paper, no keys.
No open-toed shoes, no sleeveless shirts, no ripped jeans, no paper, no keys. I walk through the metal detector, wait for the sally port, for the guards to open the door to the prison. A prison is another country. Es otro país. La Nacha said that. I learned this early visiting friends and family in and out of state and federal prisons, in and out of Texas, California, and Pennsylvania. My earliest memories of writing are letters exchanged across prison walls, baños painted in ink, tattooed on skin, poems tucked inside envelopes. In fact, the first poem I ever read publicly was in a juvenile detention center in Austin, Texas. La Peña had a poetry workshop in the juvenile detention center. In this program, I met a 12-year-old who was functionally illiterate. One of the poets in the program, Rosa, asked me to work with him one-on-one. For 2 weeks, I would listen as he told me the story he wanted to tell, transcribe the words he dictated to me each day, and every night the young man returned to his cell, paper tucked in the waistband of his pants. With the help of his cellmates, he would memorize the words on the page before returning to class the next day. At the end of the program, he performed the story with the rest of the students, paper in hand. The night before the reading, he asked me, "What about you, miss? What story are you going to tell tomorrow?" Without thinking, I responded, "I'm not a writer." Raul calmly walked up behind me and under his breath said, "You better go home tonight and write that boy a poem, sister." Recently, a comrade asked me, how can art set our people free? The question he asked was not metaphor, it was not symbolic or poetic, it was material. How can art get our people out of cages, detention centers, prisons?
Avenel State Prison, Kings County, California. California Correctional Center, Kern County, California. California Correctional Institution, Kern County, California. California Institute for Men, San Bernardino, California. California Institute for Women, Riverside County, California. California Medical
State
Facility,
Prison,
Solano County,
Kings County,
California.
California
Men's
Correctional
Colony,
Center,
San Luis
Kern
Obispo
County, California. California Correctional Institution,
California Rehabilitation
Kern County,
Center, Riverside
California.
County, California.
California Institution
California
for
State
Men,
Prison,
San
Corcoran,
Bernardino,
James County,
California. California
California State
Institution for
Prison,
Women,
Los Angeles County,
Riverside
California.
County,
California
California,
State Prison,
California
Sacramento
Medical
County,
Facility,
California.
Solano
California
County,
State Prison,
California.
Solano County, California.
California Men's College,
California Substance
San
Abuse
Luis
Treatment
Obispo
Facility,
County,
State Prison,
California.
Kings County, California.
California
California
Rehabilitation
State
Center,
Imperial County,
Riverside
California.
County,
Centinela State
California.
Prison, Imperial
California
County,
State
California.
Prison,
Central
Corcoran,
California
Kings
Water
County,
Facility,
California.
Madera County,
California State Prison,
Chuckawalla
Los
Valley
Angeles
State
County,
Prison, Riverside
California.
County, California.
California State Prison,
Correctional Training
Sacramento
Facility,
County,
Monterey County,
California.
California.
California
Dual
State
Vocational
Prison,
Institute, San
Solano
Joaquin
County,
California.
California.
Folsom State Prison,
California Substance
Sacramento
Abuse
County,
Treatment Facility
California.
and State Prison,
High
Kings
Desert
County,
State Prison, Dawson
California.
County, California.
Calabria State
Ironwood
Prison,
State Prison,
Imperial
Riverside
County,
California.
California.
Kern Valley
Centinela State Prison,
Kern County, California.
Imperial County,
Mule
California.
Street Prison, Amador
Central
County,
California Women's Facility,
North
Madera
Kern State
County,
Prison,
California.
Kern County, California.
Chuckawalla Valley State
Pelican
Prison,
Bay State Prison,
Riverside
Riverside
County, California.
Pleasant Valley
Correctional
State
Training
Prison,
Facility,
Crescent County.
Monterey County,
Richard J.
California.
Donovan Correctional
Dual
Facility,
Vocational
Rock Mountain,
Institution,
San Diego County,
San Joaquin County,
Salinas Valley
California.
State Prison, Monterey County,
Folsom State
California.
Prison,
San Quentin
Sacramento
State
County,
Prison, Marin
California.
County, California.
High Desert State
Sierra
Prison,
Conservation Center,
Lassen
Columbia,
County,
California.
California.
Valley State Prison,
Ironwood
Madera
State
County,
Prison,
California.
Riverside County,
Wasco State
California.
Prison, Kern County,
Kern Valley State Prison, Kern County, California. Mule Creek State Prison, Amador County, California. North Kern State Prison, Kern County, California. Pelican Bay State Prison, Del Norte County, California. Pleasant Valley State Prison, Fresno County, California. Richard J. Donovan Correctional Facility at Rock Mountain, San Diego County, California. Salinas Valley State Prison, Monterey County, California. San Quentin State Prison, Marin County, California. Sierra Conservation Center, Tulum, California. Valley State Prison, Madera County, California. Wasco State Prison, Kern County, California.
Valley State Prison, Madera County, California. Wasco State Prison, Kern County, California.
How can art set our people free? The question was a call. My response was to make work in a prison. I knew if I wanted to understand what it means to be free, I had to make work in places of unfreedom. So I left New York, where I was living at the time, to build a theater company inside a medium security prison, one of 48 state prisons organized in 14 complexes in Arizona. This number does not include federal prisons, ICE detention centers, or county jails. I go through the checklist in my head.
Do I have my papers?
Can I see your ID?
Are they up to date?
Empty your pockets.
Was I put on the list?
This is your number. No open-toed shoes, no sleeveless shirts, no ripped jeans, no paper, no keys.
I walked through the metal detector, wait out the Sally part for the guards to open the door.
Do I have my papers? Can I see your ID? Are they up to date? Empty your pockets. Was I put on the list? This is your number. No open-toe shoes, no sleeveless shirts, no ripped jeans, no paper, no keys. I walk through the metal detector, wait at the Sally port for the guards to open the door. I was invited to the prison by a small group inside the Santa Cruz unit of Perryville, struggling to get a theater off the ground. I start with that word, an invitation. I use it intentionally. There's something important about that. We were invited by people who were already working, making something from their own place of struggle. We were invited into a process, into something that was already being made. We were invited to be in conversation with. They called the place they met the Hub and modeled it after Zapatista Escuelitas. The Hub was dedicated to reading, discussion, and study, and to learning from each other. They held workshops and lectures, peer-to-peer learning groups, and did research together. They were teaching each other, meeting, organizing, and they had their own physical space for it inside the prison. Together, they transformed that place for warehousing people into a space for encuentro. They created a place for gathering together, for convening together, for learning together behind bars. A deliberate act of being with or present to each other, the hub was a convivial space. And because they had been doing that work for years, we were able to walk through the door and make what we made together. I asked them what was getting in the way of creating theater, and they said commitment, getting people to show up. And I knew if you put on a play, people will show up. First, they'll show up to rehearsals, then they'll have responsibility to the character, themselves, and each other. And once they show up, they'll invite other people to show up too. I had just been commissioned to adapt Helena María Viramontes' novel, Their Dogs Came With Them, for the stage. The novel is a story about what happens to a community when 4 intersecting freeways are built right through the heart of a neighborhood. These collections of stories are all told under the blades of the helicopters of relentless policing of the neighborhood. A fictionalized quarantine authority roams the streets at night, enforcing a curfew in East LA.
They came in battle array as conquerors. Their dogs came with them, running ahead of the column. They raised their muscles high, and the dust rose in whirlwinds on the roads.
A story about displacement and the history of colonization. They came in battle array as conquerors. Their dogs came with them, running ahead of the columns. They raised their muzzles high, and the dust rose in the whirlwinds on the roads. We began by reading the 336-page book in small groups together.
It's not right. It's not right, I tell you. The earth movers, the bulldozers, started from very far away, slowly made their way here, arriving here on First Street, their muzzles like sharpened metal teeth making way for the freeway. It's just not right. Pay attention, because displacement will always come down to 2 things: earthquakes or earth movers.
Over the course of a year, we created a page-to-stage developmental process of adaptation through a series of workshops. Similar to the novel, the play is structured like a freeway. There are 4 different separate and intersecting storylines. 2 months into the process, it became clear to me that the time given to us, there just simply wasn't enough hours for rehearsal in the day, and it would have been impossible for me to direct it on my own. So I decided to divide the work and brought in 3 additional directors. We started meeting 5 days a week. Each director was responsible for a story track, and then we assigned a lead director on the tracks that intersected. In the mounting of the play, we had to put it together like a puzzle, except we didn't always know what the other puzzle pieces looked like. This also meant that the theater took over the entire yard for a few hours almost every day. The hub and 3 spaces outdoors, including what would become the performance space in the middle of the yard. We were making theater in a prison in the desert. We were working in an art form that is about the body, in a place where the body is policed, surveillanced, criminalized. In order to tell this story about the brown body, the queer body, the working class body, folks had to claim power and autonomy over their own bodies in a prison, in the desert, in the middle of the yard. There was nothing safe about it, nothing safe about that request, and yet the work required it. In a prison, in the desert, in the middle of the yard, the palimpsest of memory, the ghost. In a prison, there are cages inside the walls. In a prison, in the desert, they put her in a disciplinary cage in the middle of the yard. In the summer, it was 107 degrees outside. They left her there in a cage in the middle of the yard for 4 hours, ignored her pleas for water in the desert to be sent back to her cell. Sun blistering in the desert, sun blisters on her skin in the desert. Her body blisters and burns until her organs shut down. barbed wire, and armed guards all around her, she collapses. She collapsed in a cage, in a prison, in the desert, in the middle of the yard. Years later, in the middle of the same yard, several hundred women wearing state-issued orange uniforms gather in a circle, barbed wire and armed guards all around them in a prison in the desert. They wait for shift change so that the correction officers leaving work, the COs coming to work, every officer coming and going had to walk past them. Several hundred women silently standing in a circle. Several hundred women gathered for 10 minutes in the middle of the yard. They hold up handwritten signs that read, "We remember. We remember." 10 years later, we are making theater in a prison in the desert in the middle of that same yard.
Gates and barbed wire, guns and dust, steel and concrete, sharpshooters and armed guards.
Gates and barbed wire,
guns
and dust,
gates,
steel and concrete,
guns and dust,
sharpshooters and armed
gates,
guards,
guns,
gates and barbed wire,
dust,
guns and
dust,
dust,
and dust,
Steel
gates
and concrete,
and guns
sharpshooters
and dust,
and armed guards,
gates,
gates and barbed
guns,
wire,
dust,
guns and dust,
and dust,
gates
and dust.
and guns.
I slept
and
with it
dust,
between sheets,
gates,
breathed in the dust
guns,
like storms,
dust,
like smoke.
dust.
I ate it at every
dust,
meal,
and
the
dust.
disdain and neglect.
The wind kicked up the dust that day in the desert. That afternoon, in the middle of the yard, the space was transformed into a theater filled to capacity. Over 100 incarcerated peoples from the Santa Cruz unit wearing state-issued orange uniforms, along with 25 invited guests allowed by the Department of Corrections, gathered in the middle of the yard. The premiere of Their Dogs Came With Them inside the prison was a full production, a collaboration with a team of professional artists on the outside that, in addition to the directors, included a set designer, a choreographer, a sound designer, a scenic painter, a stage manager, a production manager, 4 producers, and our band, who performed an original score live for the performance, alongside a team of incarcerated artists on the inside that included 17 actors, a costume designer, an assistant stage manager, a dramaturg, a 7-person run crew, and 2 producers who taught us how to write memos. Barbed wire and armed guards all around them. A group of 17 actors performed in a 32 by 82 foot space shaped like a rectangle in a 3/4 round. The space was designed site responsibly so that the prison itself was integral to the staging. Throughout the entire play, 4 actors wearing state-issued orange uniforms guarded the perimeter of the space as fictionalized quarantine authority, as 4 armed guards patrolled the outside perimeter. Announcements on the loudspeaker in the distance. In one scene, an actor playing a survivor of a Japanese internment camp goes to the police officer to correct a mistake in the news about an alleged crime in the neighborhood, but the authorities quickly begin interrogating him.
First things first, where are you from?
I'm not a foreigner, if that's what you mean. I was born here, in this country, a US citizen. No, this was not what I meant when I said first things first. The young man I encountered the evening before the incident was a boy, not a girl. There, that was all I wanted to say. Look, I didn't close my store to waste my time arguing. Whether he was a she or she was a he, it's of no consequence to me anymore. Understand? Maybe it was my bad heart, maybe my good heart, maybe I wanted to be kind, or maybe employ one of their kind. Maybe I thought about dust and how I ate it at every meal, slept with it between sheets, breathed in dust storms like smoke. Maybe because I understand way too well how everything can be taken away in one signature, one executive order, numbering 9066, and all that was left were the clothes on my back, and nothing else, except perhaps for someone's kindness, a memory which still makes me weep. Maybe, just maybe, I felt a sliver of pity for the starving boy. Is that what you want to record, my mistake? But isn't all of this a mistake?
In that moment, the sky shifted as the clouds rolled through the desert. Unscripted, the actor repeated the lines, "Isn't all of this a mistake?" She forced our attention to a wider vision of the yard, turning in circles, signaling with arms extended, "Look, look!" We were reminded where we were: gates and barbed wire, guns and dust, steel and concrete, sharpshooters and armed guards. Look, isn't all of this a mistake? There are cages inside cages in the prison. Not everyone from the unit was allowed to be there that day, but the staging area was chosen in part so that everyone on the unit, even those locked up in closed custody, could hear the play and could listen to the music. And the set was designed so your focus as an audience member was in front of you, those sitting across from you, the playing area, but also the sky. And the sky continued to shift and change that day. One of the incarcerated women watching, serving a life sentence, said at one point she looked up at the sky, listening to the music, closed her eyes, and tried to imagine herself flying above it all until the prison disappeared. This model for our work was largely inspired by Compañía Teatro Penitenciario, a professional company comprised of incarcerated men at Santa Marta Atitlan Maximum Security Prison outside of Mexico City. Their focus is on professional training, acting, design, stage management, producing. Since 2009, the Teatro has utilized the challenging collaborative process of creating theater across walls to develop a theater method based on autonomy. They have performed for thousands of people, incarcerated folks inside the prison, as well as their families during visitation hours. And before COVID, they had started touring shows outside of the prison. In Arizona, each of the outside professional artists taught workshops on their areas of expertise in an attempt to make the process of theater production transparent and accessible. But in some ways, we were also using the theater to see how far we could push the limits of isolation. If we could get a small group of 25 invited guests into a prison in the state of Arizona to witness the play with other incarcerated peoples on the yard, could we get the Department of Corrections to allow us to invite family to the prison as audience members? Like the one in Mexico, like the company in Mexico, or to tour the piece to other yards in the prison, or to allow the theater to perform children's plays in the visitation center on visitation days. Is there a way folks coming out of prison can continue their artistic training on the outside? If the state has created a school to prison pipeline, can we create a prison to university pipeline, for example? By making the play, we started to dream together in order to enact and narrate new possibilities. In that way, the play, theater, art is a rehearsal for something bigger, a gathering of people across borders and walls we did not make, and beyond bars that we are trying to tear down together. An imagining of something better. And that imagining is material, not the ephemeral, not over there then, the here now, embodied. It's about the body, free. One of the many symbols of the play is that of the volador, inspired by the danza of the voladores, a ritual to ask the gods to end the severe drought that brought hunger to the people. When we were reading the novel together, someone said their dogs came with them as a story about hunger, not just for food, but for something more, something greater, you know? Still performed in Mexico, voladores are a symbol of freedom, anchored and attached to a tall wooden pole more than 100 feet in the air. 5 men climb to the top and let themselves fall. They fly counterclockwise until they reach the ground.
Spinning and gliding with the grace of a bird, the ropes slowly unwinding as they use the crown of their heads. the drum of their human hearts to direct their flight.
I watched him fly, waiting for the gusts of winds to glide him up off the ground. He rose in a spiral, dust billowing, bloodied bare soles of his tattered feet slowly disappeared into the clouds.
He wore feathers carefully woven into silk cloth wings and claws that attached to bracelets. Artisans selected plumes from the bravest eagles for his breastplates and reinforced the plates with wax.
A man strung together by iguana bones and wire, fine, slender bones and wrists so thin I could wrap my 2 fingers around them. Strong but balsa wood light, a magnificent half-bird.
After centuries of ritual, who needs harnesses and wax when hemp spun of mighty, willful faith can hold you up to the wind just as strongly?
At the premiere, the play culminated in a scene of all the actors sweeping the space with arms extended as in flight, a flock, clearing the space together and honoring of the ghosts of those that came before, of those that will come after, a ritual against hunger. Under the blades of the helicopters in this country, not our own, for a brief moment like the voladoras, we were able to fly together. For a brief moment, we were able to transcend the gates and barbed wire, the guns and dust, steel and concrete, sharpshooters and armed guards together for a brief moment behind those walls. We were free. 6 months later, Kendra Ware staged the play site-specifically under the I-10 freeway in Tucson, Arizona. In the prison, the set asked us to look at the sky, to imagine ourselves in flight. Under the freeway, it asked us to look at the land, the desert, the freeway above us, but also the mountains in front of us, the setting sun and the rising moon. On native land, South Tucson was, is, will always be Tohono O'odham and Yaqui land. The cast members acknowledged that at every single rehearsal. They burned sage in an altar built under a street lamp. And being outside, we felt the sensation of the wind, people walking by, time passing, day turning to night. All of that, along with the music, became our soundscape too. The sound of the wind, the birds, the semi-trucks passing. If their dogs came with them as a story about displacement, I wanted the staging of the story to be an act of repair in this place, in the desert, in South Tucson, called Barrio Libre. Again, what does it mean to be free? We chose the cast because they had a connection to that community. They were scholars and organizers and artists, most of who were born and raised in Tucson, performing this story underneath the freeway. Community members remembered the houses that were once there before they were taken by eminent domain to build the highway. Under the desert sky, we took back a space our people had been kicked out of to tell a story of our community, displaced but not forgotten. And then the pandemic hit. During the pandemic, we decided to take all of that music and see if we could use the music as the driving narrative force to tell a story. This project continues to shift as the world shifts. Return feels like the right word to describe where we're at in this work. A return to the text and story, a return to process new, a return to working together again, a return to the body, a return to flight. 15 years since the book Their Dogs Came With Them was originally published, 30 years since the moment described in it of building the freeways cutting off East Los Angeles from the rest of LA. We return to talk about displacement, with the community being displaced again. Building on the history, experience, and collaborative process in the prison, we discovered the possibility for a new iteration of the project: performance, concert, album, theater. Riding the Currents of the Wilding Wind centers music as the narrative force, drawing on the theatrical possibilities of a concert and video to create a sonic landscape and rich visual world steeped in symbolism and poetry. The music matched by a visual score, a multimedia concert performance that weaves together stories and songs about earth movers, sharpshooters, helicopters in the sky, and this time women that fly. In addition to releasing the album digitally, we've also created a limited edition vinyl record. We have that here tonight, to be released next week at the Magic. Throughout the evolution of the project, we're creating spaces for intergenerational conversation and dialogue. Alongside the development of Riding the Currents of the Wilding Wind, we offer collective songwriting workshops that actively invite communities into the process of art making. We've conducted workshops with the Community Land Trust in East Los Angeles, Indigenous students in Arizona, immigrant children in Maryland, and young musicians in Austin, Texas. As Martha Gonzalez describes, the songs created in the workshops are text, sung theories, and are accessible archives that communicate embodied knowledge across time, discipline, borders, generations, and other ways of knowing. A song as a sonic and literary manifestation is a unique, cathartic memento and a powerful political tool. Without question, a song is also an important historical text. In this way, song lyrics can be viewed as knowledge and theory. The song itself is not the most important aspect of the collective songwriting workshops, but rather its ability to engender solidarity. Music as research, music as archive, music as movement. A gathering of people across borders and walls we did not make, and beyond bars that we are trying to tear down, an imagining of something better. This work demands that we create and build new possibilities and worlds together, that we dance and sing together, which to us is the same as dreaming, the same as freedom. If we can create the spaces for us to be together free, we can begin to imagine a world where we are all free. Our body as theory in motion, singing, creating, building together, as resistance, as freedom, as improvisation, as a reaching toward a horizon, we can actually see where the sky meets the earth.
She looked out into the endless field of construction. The construction of the freeway was ridding the neighborhood of everything that was familiar to her. And she was lost, again. The memory of who lived where, who buried their children's umbilical cords, or grew lemons the size of apples, done away. Soon the earth movers would be running again, fighting trenches wider than rivers. The sound of jackhammering blasts and cacophony of earth movers over the sound of passing cars on First Street. The divergence and convergence, the velocity of trucks, vans, motorbikes, speed blasts, trailers, and more cars would only disappear at night when she held her breath like she was doing now.
Everything she owned bundled up in a rainbow straw bag. Nobody noticed her the day she watched them tear down her little blue house. In its place, The 4 freeway interchange would be constructed in order to reroute 547,300 cars a day through the east side. She stared at the incomplete on-ramp building bridge being constructed above the boundary of Trinity Cemetery, mangled limb, as if a monster dinosaur had bitten into it, and a mesh of electrical wires hung out of broken cement, like arteries stripping mounds of heaved-up rubble.
Yet life is stratified layers of time, a complex gut of pulsating mystery. One would have to be close enough to look into her eyes, jump into the trunk of her heart, lift the stage curtains to see behind her props. It was one thing to assume, another to conjure, and yet another to feel for her. One would need metaphor to love her.
She had no choice but to leave. What can one do when an economy is based on capital and one has so little currency in her pockets? Never, never lose a coin. Never ignore a penny on the floor. Save and save. She saved for a birthday gift of Converse sneakers, a promise to her boy, because the ad on the radio promised that children could fly in these sneakers, and that was the one thing she wanted for her children.
Flight.
Shoulders back, I raise my chin higher, as Mama told me time and again, to fill up with the embrace of ancestral spirits. The rain on my face cleansed away my exhaustion. Every dead volador of every century lifted me, raised me to new vision. Every breath of every ancestor, every ash of every wind raised me, lifting you a new vision. Arms up, fingers pointing to the heavens, waiting for the gust of winds to glide me up across the borders of the sky. Bloody bare souls of tattered feet. So I lift one foot forward, then another, refusing to stop. Every breath of every ancestor, every ash of every wind, every dead volador of every century lifted me, raised me to a new vision. Every ounce of 468, every ash of every wind raised me to a new vision. Past the Caesarean scars of the earth, out to limitless space where everything is possible.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Where are you? Wow, wow, wow. What an amazing journey and process and product and ideas you have relayed to us today. How do you feel? How are you feeling?
I'm ready for a drink. We had a very, I say that not jokingly, because we had a very quick process of coming in last night, meeting folks for the very first time. Stanford has been really great to me. I think that has a whole lot to do with the leadership of Paula Moya. And so it was a wonderful whirlwind of a day that I got to spend with folks.
It truly, I saw your process in terms of preparing this, preparing our professors who are participating and our actor, PhD student, Maria, and the way you communicated with them and prepared them. And truly, it was seeing you as a director and playwright and a thinker at work was such a pleasure. I wanted to ask you about this question of making a theater as an act for, by, with community. How did you arrive to it, and why, as you asked us within the performance, why does it actually set us free?
Yeah, I don't know how to make theater any other way, and so when I just don't know how. And so the story that I tell about reading a poem in the juvenile correction system, I was very fortunate that one of the mentor poet writers, I was there as a school teacher, and one of the mentor writers was Sharon Bridgeforth. If you don't know her work, google.com, order her books. And Sharon sort of grabbed me and said, I think that you're a writer, which is something that I really resisted for a very long time. But if you google.com Sharon Bridgeforth, you'll see that she's very cute and very convincing. And so I would follow her just about anywhere. And I did for a long time. And it's still resistant throughout the whole process. I would say, what is this going to do? I was the person that was saying, what does this do? What does the poem do? What does it mean for us? And I tell this story often. I grew up in San Antonio. That's where I was raised. And I think that for me, the writing is our document. It is the proof that we existed, that what we said, that what we dreamed mattered. And I think it's important. And I think for me, theater, my mentor, Sharon Bridgeforth, has actually told me to stop using the word theater completely. But I think the reason why I'm drawn to it as an art form, as I try to explore other ways and processes of making work, is because it is an art form that is about the physical body. And there's a power to that. When we were working in the prison, in the very beginning of the process, it was very difficult to get people to commit to a scene. So you would be inside of a scene and then people would fall out, or they would start laughing, or they would get nervous, or all of those things. And we had to have a really serious conversation because it's not safe to be vulnerable and honest. And again, I also don't know how to make work without being vulnerable and honest. And so people had to make a choice about whether they wanted to do it or not, and whether they were capable of doing it or not. And one of the moments in which we were sort of practicing that thing of staying inside of a scene and not dropping character and not dropping the scene was the very last, if you know the novel, it's the very last scene of the novel and the very last scene of the play, where Tranquilina stands up to the police and she says, "We're not dogs. We're not dogs." And some of the lines from that last song are her lines. I put one foot forward and then another. refusing to stop, and with every breath of every ancestor. All of those are Chankalina's lines. And so one of the folks was inside of that scene, and as she's saying the scene, as CO opens the door to the room. And so, I will not fear him. I put one step forward and then another, straight to the CO. She gave it straight to him. And he looked at her and he looked at us and he said, I am so sorry for interrupting. And then walked out the door. And that was one of those moments that I was reminded, one, how dangerous to claim our own physical bodies and selves can be, but also the power in it. And so I think that for me, this is about autonomy. This is about freedom. To be able to be free in our bodies, I think is important. And I think that part of the reason I'm drawn to continuing to make work for the stage is for exactly that reason, because it becomes about the physical body.
I must say, I started to feel this freedom watching this performance lecture. Sitting in my seat, I felt your commitment to that freedom, and it felt like I was too being influenced by it. So thank you for this performance, for that specific reason that affected me. Before we go to the audience and start taking your questions, I do have one more question for you. You've been thinking a lot about form, and you take us on this journey that takes us to the highway, to the prison, through the pandemic, and now to the stage. And I was curious. Where are you in this relationship with form, and where do you see it going?
Yeah, the pandemic was an interesting time for me because I say this a lot because I've been reflecting on it a lot, is that producers didn't know how to produce work, which in some ways was the best thing that could have happened, is they were like, I don't know what to do. What do you want to do? And so everything became about experimentation. At a certain level, I kind of think that we should have all just been quiet, and, make sure that everybody was fed, which is a lot of work that people did during the pandemic. But it became a really generative moment for me, where I was like, oh, what if it was this? What if it was that? What if it was this? And I'm seeing that I'm doing that with a lot of the work that I'm working on now. And so like this piece, after the stage adaptation, is a performance lecture. So Martha and I actually do it in dialogue with each other. So this is the first time that I've done it by myself. We normally do it with music and with video, and it's a conversation. So it's a performance lecture. It is the album. It is the concert. Eventually, I kind of want to deconstruct the performance and create an installation that is just sound and video. And so thinking about like, oh, what are all the different ways that it can live? My big dream is that the next iteration is actually bringing the voladoras to the United States, bringing the women to New York City is where I want to bring them, because they fly in Puebla, and one of the largest migrations of Mexicans to New York City is from the state of Puebla. So I want to bring them to New York to do the Danza de Voladoras there. And so again, it's like how all the different ways. I'm working on another piece right now, Carrascos Asiáticos, that is workshops, that is a meal, that is an installation, that is also a sound. So thinking about all these different ways in which it can live, right? And for me, part of it is, as a writer, I'm interested in how things breathe. And so I think that different things are required for different moments and different places. I was excited to be invited to do a lecture because, as I say in the piece, I'm really interested in how artists create knowledge and how artists are making theory as well, and so working with that form and like, oh, what does the essay look like? What does the lecture look like?
that for me is fun. I guess I'm kind of a nerd in that way. Like I just like seeing like, what if it was a poem? What if it was a song? What if it was, my partner hates this, but I love that stupid Instacart commercial that says I'm at the grocery store, I'm at the football game, I'm at the combination grocery store football game. Because I'm blind also, so I have to, as you can see by my big type, so I often have to order my groceries but it's kind of like that. Like, how can we be in both things and not, and what's necessary in terms of work. So all of those things are things that I'm thinking about.
Thank you so much. So, questions from our audience. I will call on you. Do we have questions? Because I have too many questions and I can go on all night. Yes.
So, Summer, thank you very much for your good comments, and thank you, Virginia, for a wonderful presentation tonight. What I was interested in was the role of music in the performance. So there's word in poetry, of course, there's acting and movement. And the performance tonight that we saw is bracketed by music. The introductory scene, which is music without commentary, then the last singing song performance, which is music. How does that fit into what you're trying to accomplish?
The performance at the Magic is a concert. It's a concert. And so, in fact, it's been talking about form, it's been a negotiation. When I brought in 3 pages to a rehearsal one day, I thought that my director was going to fall out of the chair because I literally had 3 pages. And she's like, "Where's my script?" And I said, "That's it, 3 pages." And I didn't even make it 36 font. There's 3 pages. That's what you've got. And so the performance at the Magic is a concert. One of the things that we've been doing, which I also think is something that I learned in terms of the pandemic and in terms of this process, is the piece in the prison was a production of a production company that myself and my partner have called Autoridad Productions. The piece Under the Freeway was a co-production with Borderlands Theater. So it was the first time that we began saying we were producing, even though there's a lot of times when I was producing but didn't say it. And the moment that I began saying that I was producing, it also meant that I could control process, that this is what the process is gonna look like. And so for the making of the album, we started on Zoom. And then what we did is we developed the songs through a series of residencies. So the Center for Imagination in the Borderlands at Arizona State University, that's helmed by Natalie Diaz, the Clarice in Maryland, Texas Performing Arts in Austin, and then some storefront residencies that we made up on our own in East Los Angeles. And we would meet for a week and we would develop the songs together. And so a lot of it was sitting with the novel, so taking the novel and seeing like, oh, how do we make this into a song? And then once we've completed the album, which was about a 2-year developmental process because there was no rush to get it out, it was just us gathering when we could gather. And as I mentioned, also doing these collective songwriting workshops together. So after we completed the album is when we started to think about what is the performance of it. And so one of the things that's really special about the concert version is you get to see Martha act. So Martha Gonzalez acts. Tailana Inamoto, who's the violinist, has a lot of movement with the instrument. And so you get to see a lot of that in terms of stretching of form and discipline. And I think that we did a works in progress version of it at Cornell that was just music, no video, no set, just music. Some text, but just music. This iteration at the Magic has three musicians, 1 performer, and it has a set design from the woman that did the design in the prison, Tanya Oriana. It has a video design from the woman that designed the performance lecture, Yi Unyam. And it has costume design by David Arevalo, who's from Texas. And so the next iteration is going to be at Las Maestras Center in Santa Barbara. And that's going to be it's going to be as large of a band as we can afford to get on a stage. The next iteration out of that is at San Jose. And so at Macla in San Jose in September. So part of what we're doing is in each iteration is we're trying to keep ourselves open to, okay, what do we learn? What do we need in the next iteration? Do we need a performer? Do we not need a performer? Do we need costumes? Do we not? So we keep learning with the piece. And then in terms of what A Todo Dar is producing, are helping to produce, in our last iteration of this will be in October in New York at Pregones Theater. And so 2024 is when it starts to move to 4 different places. But the driving force is the music. And so it is a concert. And one of the things that I feel is true, which is still a conversation, but one of the things that I feel is true is I think it's enough. Like, I think that's the storytelling is actually in the songs. And I think that the way that we tell stories, oftentimes when you go to other countries, music, theater, dance, yes, are almost always in the same department, because we tell our stories in that way through music, theater, dance. That's how we tell stories. And so for me as a theater artist, it was really great to not work with tons and tons of text and to work in a different form, to be able to work with the music. It has been super, it's been fun, and it's also been an exercise in seeing that we speak different languages though too, right? So how we rehearse, how we improvise, all of those things are things that we've been learning, I think, together.
Amazing, thank you. Yes?
Hola, Vicky, gracias. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for everything. I'm completely obsessed with embodied practice. And I want to ask you about a particular thing that you just said. And that was the trouble of people staying in the scene, how vulnerable it makes us to be embodied. Tell us more stories about that moment when people were delivering and they were free. People were delivering and they were feeling, if you can.
Can you repeat one more time? People were and they were free?
When people are performing.
Performing. When people are performing.
Free.
And they are free. It's so funny because one of my questions when we introduced each other yesterday was, what are you obsessed with right now? So I love that you start with obsession. When I started going to Arizona when SB 1070 happened. So I started going to protests and things like that, and started meeting people that were doing work there. And someone that became a very good friend of mine who was trained by Raul Salinas, when Raul died, sort of randomly started sending me text, just saying, how are you, comrade? Just random, like not a person that I had a very close relationship with. And that question of how are you, comrade, made us very close friends very quickly, because it was a sincere question. Again, he's the one that asked me the question, how does art set our people free? And he was sincerely asking, how are you? Because when Raul died, we weren't okay. There was this real feeling that we were losing our mentors. We were losing our mentors in some ways. So once we started having a conversation and we were really brought together by Raul after Raul passed, I started to go to the prison because they were doing work there anytime that I was in Arizona. So if I was in Tucson, I would go. If I was in Phoenix, I would go. And they had a panza party in the prison once, and so they performed monologues and performed my work to me. I think I'd been doing that work for a little over 3 years when folks started saying that they wanted to start a theater. And so folks on the inside were saying they wanted to start a theater. And so the idea was that I would work with people's stories for people to tell their own stories. And so the first time that I brought, it was a chapter of The Dogs Came With Them into the prison, was because I was working on the adaptation and it was not going well. It is an epic novel. It's a monumental novel. I don't like theater to be longer than an hour. So it's a monumental novel, and I wanted it to be performed in an hour. And so I was just having trouble with it, so I brought Their Dogs Came With Them, a chapter, because what I love about Viramontes' writing is that at so many ways she's writing about a very specific neighborhood. And not East LA, she's writing about a 3-block radius. You know, we did a walking tour of the book. She's writing about a very specific neighborhood, and she's writing specific stories, and yet it's not memoir or autobiographical. It allows you, she uses that as an entry point to be able to imagine. And so I thought, oh, that would be a good exercise. Like, how do we use a place, a real place, and how do we use our own experiences to imagine something bigger in some ways. And so when I went in and people read that chapter out loud, I could hear all the characters, all of them. And I was having a very difficult time hearing the characters with actors. And they were reading the literary text, and I could hear the characters, which is what I could do when I first read the novel. I could hear the characters. And so I told them, I said, look, you want to do a theater. The folks that are organizing want folks to tell their own stories. I can't write this play. Like, all these things are happening at the same time. We have a couple of options of what we can do. So very long story to say that what folks said that they wanted to do is they said, the last thing we want to do is to tell our own stories. Like, that's not what we want. And mostly it was because folks were like, we've had time to think about our stories. We know our stories. We live our stories. We want to do something else. And so there was something about going into character, specifically in the place of the prison, that I think allowed for that freedom. And there's something about when you do character work, folks that have done that work before, there's something about character work where you really have to interrogate the person that you are. And so this thing of an embodiment, I mean, everything. And folks were so committed to that novel that they studied the character from the novel, they studied the character from my script, and then they brought their own experiences into the world, right? And so I think that there was something really important about that. And inside of what we call, or what the state calls, a woman's prison, one of the things that was really fascinating to me is that there were so many different folks that are incarcerated inside of a woman's prison, so many different expressions of gender. And so one of the things that I think that we were also able to do really effectively inside of the prison is for folks to both play a gender that they may have been claiming for themselves, but also to play a gender that was not their own, and to be inside of that body. And both in the prison and outside of the prison, there were folks that changed pronouns, that began speaking with a different pronoun. There were a lot of different things happened, and I think that some of it was because there was a different type of exploration of the body and embodiment. I don't know if that answers your question.
Amazing, thank you. So we have time for one more question.
Thank you very much. I'd like to try something a little different. I'd like to ask a question to the Stanford student performers who have been working with you, if that's okay. I'd like to ask them to share their impressions and maybe to get feedback from you in this public forum, since we're recording. This is for history, so no pressure, but Maria.
No pressure, but Maria.
Gracias
¿Dónde está
putting
María?
me on the spot, Héctor.
Well, I guess to answer your question, in terms of like my experience oh, sorry. Hi, everyone. My name is Maria. I'm a second-year PhD student here, and I worked in this performance lecture. And I guess I wanted to say I was really, when we rehearsed this yesterday, we talked about embodiment. We talked about like the way that, specifically for me, it was like the way that like if I play a male character, where does that sit in my body versus a female character? But we didn't go through the lecture quite like it was going to be today. And so sitting there, I was sort of like feeling myself being really moved and being like, I don't want to cry because then that's going to bring attention to myself. But I was feeling really, really moved. I'm from Mexico. I haven't been home in a long time, and like hearing and seeing the voladores, it was like there was something really real and visceral there. And yeah, I mean, I was just really moved by it, and I was really thankful to have the chance to be a part of the experience. And I really hope I get to work with Vicky again, because it's been really wonderful.
Thank you, Maria. So, one last question. You bring up the idea of the material and the ephemeral over and over again throughout the performance. And I was curious, in terms of the problems that are posed throughout this lecture performance, questions of freedom and incarceration, understanding the body as theory, understanding our need as human beings to take flight. How does this question of the material come in? What can we hope for after having seen this performance? What can we hope for as a potential resolution to these distinctions that are often made between the material and the ephemeral?
I was an organizer before I was an artist, and so for me, when I say that I battled Sharon for years, I really had a very difficult time with the material. Like, what does it do? What does it do? And I don't think I understand it yet, to be perfectly honest. I do think in the prison was one of the first times where my art and my organizing didn't feel separate. And I was really clear about what my purpose was. And my purpose was to make theater. I was working with organizers. Who had a much deeper purpose. My purpose was to make theater. And it sounds silly, but part of what that meant was that we had to get the color of the tarp that laid on the floor right. It mattered what that color looked like. And when I say that those two things came together, because in that performance, there were so many of those moments where something else was tapped into. If you know the book, it goes from day to night. And I actually wanted to stage it from day to night, so I timed it. I sat outside, I watched the sun, I timed it. I came in, I said this brilliant idea to my inside producers, and they just looked at me and said, "That's when we eat. We can't stage the performance when we eat." And I was like, I spent 3 days figuring this out. But the day of the performance, it was overcast. And when it was nighttime, it became dark. And one of the scenes is a moment where it rains. And I went to one of the other directors and I said, if it rains today, like, that's gonna be too much, because it was not rainy season in the desert. But it switched. A flock of birds, when folks flocked, they came together. The moment that I tried to describe in the performance lecture, where she made us look at the prison, I told her, what made you do that? And she said, I could just feel it. I could feel how close we were, this prison, to the internment camps. There are internment camps on reservations in Arizona. I could feel them. I could feel the voices. I could hear the voices. So that, I mentioned the tarp. So that tarp, as soon as we rolled that out, folks were like, oh, you got that from the men that built this prison who were also incarcerated when they wrote their names in the cement, you know, and we didn't know that, but it happened. So we were in conversation. So there's a power that I don't totally understand. I say this story often. When I first saw Martha Gonzalez perform with Quetzal in a tiny bar in Santa Monica without windows, there was this moment when light came, and it was like she was not on the same plane. And I said, oh, something just happened. And you can recognize it when someone taps into it. I don't know how it happens. I think when you do work with integrity and honesty and openness, it is energy, it's moving something, and it's important. I don't know how it happens. I don't always know how to call it down, but I know when it does happen, and I can feel it. We were having this conversation earlier about product and process, and I've been having an ongoing conversation about practice. There's something about practice and repetition and returning that I do believe that something happens. And I do believe that our story, our song, the written word, there's value in it. There's value to our people. And there's a way, like when we were talking about freedom, talking about abolition, to me, it's not an endpoint. It really is a practice. And it's one that we fall out of, and it's one that we have to return to. And so in this moment of renewed, I'm from Texas, so renewed violence, in this moment in which our country is dropping bombs in other countries, again, funding the dropping of bombs in other countries, again. People still celebrate birthdays, and they're doing it in war zones, and people still sing. People still acknowledge Ramadan. All of those things are important, and they are material. It's how we hold on to something. And I think that in the prison was the first time that I realized, like, oh, my role is not to, I'm also a terrible organizer, by the way. My role is not to, people were trying to get me to go to these different committee meetings that were happening, and I was like, if I do that, I'm not gonna get the color of the floor right. And it's just, that's important too, right? And I think that needs to happen together. Like, it can't be one or the other. It has to happen in unison, because it's not just about the floor. It's about a deeper conversation, I hope, that we're trying to have together.
Thank you so much. And yes, it is material and it's very real. And I do believe something happened tonight, and we owe you a great thanks for it. Please give our guest a great big hand.
One last thing very quickly is that I said to folks on the inside that if you make a play, that people will come. That has always been true of when I have made a play, and yet I am terribly nervous about San Francisco because it's the very first time that I've performed anything in the Bay Area or have presented anything in the Bay Area. And so please come and invite others to come with you. And let me know if even the half-off discount code is not enough.
I tested it today.
Did it work?
Yes, it did.
It works.
I bought full price tickets, but I tested it because I wanted to make sure that it works. It works.
It
so you should go.
works.
So we have something to give you, Vicki? Yes. It's your birthday. So let's start with this.
So we have created a poster that honors Helena María Viramontes' imagery of her work and what we brought so beautifully to life. And we hope that you'll and come revisit this again.
It's beautiful. Thank you so much.
As well, so that you won't ever forget us. Okay? Stop it. So this says,
Can you say what it says?
yes, it says Center for Comparative, well, Stanford Street Seal because she came to Stanford. Center for Comparative Studies in Race and Ethnicities, Virginia Grise, 19th Annual Kieve Distinguished Lecture, 2024.
And it also says, wait, did you read that first part? Center for Comparative Studies? You just read that? Race and ethnicity. So I'm going to announce publicly for the first time, I just got a job, a tenure track job at the University of Texas. And I'm going to hang up everything that says race and ethnicity on my door.
Thank y'all. I need to be direct.
So I lift one foot forward, then another, refusing to stop. Every breath of every ancestor, every ash of every wind, every dead volador of every century lifted me, raised me to a new vision. Every ounce it more succeed, every ash of every wind raised me to a new vision. Past the Caesarean scars of the earth, out to limitless space where everything is possible. Past the Caesarean scars of the earth, out to limitless space.
So I want to thank everybody for coming. Really appreciate your presence here tonight. It's a great pleasure to have you. And as she says, go to San Francisco. It's going to be a great show.